Welcome to the DentalFit Podcast, the show where cleans and jerks aren't just at the dentist. I'm your host, Mark, dentist by day, Olympic lifting fan, every other waking moment. Today's guest is a man who leads with his Iron Tribe mentality, coaches with his heart, and somehow finds time to podcast, train, and parent, Chris Ackland. He's the head coach at Iron Tribe Weightlifting. He's coached national champions and is the driving force behind a massive upcoming weightlifting comp. Chris, welcome.
Thank you so much. You've done your research.
Just a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay. Speaking of research, so I've got this new sort of, I guess, I found I've improved my jerk, and like numbers have gone up.
Yeah.
And I can pretty much attribute it to foam rolling.
I was going to say this is to do with the video. That is my life right now. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, it's like my thoracic mobility is really good.
It's the key to everything.
White lights all around.
Yeah.
But that could be a circulation issue. I don't know.
I like that. That's really good.
I should probably get that checked out, actually. So you're organizing a weightlifting comp in August.
In August, yeah.
What's that about?
So, I have, I suppose, a colleague. I'd call him a work friend, I suppose, if you would. I've done some work with him. He's mentored me, I suppose. Thomas Lilly from Zero Weakness up in Queensland, and I wanted to learn how he programmed, and then I wanted to learn a bit about the business and the back end and how he's managed to build. Because when I had first heard of him, he had one gym, and now he's got about 7 gyms around in a couple of different countries, in Wales and New Zealand, and just a fascinating guy and really simple. And so I really enjoyed him. So anyway, long story short, he contacted me just before I was getting to Perth with Josh, the man behind the camera. And he's like, oh, we have this opportunity. We're running a Australian Powerlifting League Nationals. Yep. We're going to run it in Melbourne, and we're hiring out the convention centre. And we're looking for other sports. We've overcommitted. It's going to cost us an absolute arm and a leg. And we're looking for other sports to come in. And I was like, I don't have any money to do this. He's like, we're going to give it to you for free. But the catch is that the spectators that come to watch, the entry that they pay to watch, we take. And I was like, this seems like a pretty good deal.
Fair deal.
And I was like, at first I was like, do I go to the governing body? Do I not go to the governing body? I had a conversation with Josh about, would this be something he'd be interested to do? Because obviously he's no longer in the weightlifting world. And
sad.
What's that?
Sad.
It is sad, but he's absolutely crushing it in everything that he's doing at the moment. And funnily enough, we were literally in the car. Like, I just landed in Perth and we had this conversation, and he's like, you should do it. And I was like, I'll think about it. He's like, I'll do it with you. And that was kind of where I suppose the momentum started from.
And so weightlifting's on the cards.
The competition. So then I had a few conversations with the person that's running it, and Dan Carpenter, and I like the way they work. There is no red tape to jump through. There is like, they've kind of given us, like, obviously there's certain red tape from the convention center that they've got their rules and regulations, but as far as APL are concerned, they're happy for us to do our thing and how we want to do it. And so I thought about it for a good couple of weeks, and he's like, I need an answer from you. And I was like, okay, why not? I've always had the goal. When I started my club, I always had the goal to run one big event.
Yeah.
And my initial thought was the Frankston Arts Centre, because it's relatively local to us. A gym that I admire, PTC, ran a really big competition there. And I was like, it just would be cool to do something like that, to give back in some capacity. And then this opportunity popped up, and I'm like, whenever am I going to have this opportunity to run something at the convention center?
Yeah. Convention center is huge as well.
It's massive. And arm wrestling are going to be there. Australia's strongest in strongman are going to be there. The APL Nationals has about 480 lifters across the 3 days.
Yeah.
A massive prize pool. Like, what they're doing is like, it's very admirational. It's like, well, why not work shoulder to shoulder with these guys and give it a crack? So
and it sounds like all the strength sports are there. Except weightlifting. So
yes, yeah. And I think the only other missing is CrossFit, right? Like, that would really be a nice round table of strength sports.
It would be.
But and maybe they just didn't know anyone in that world.
Maybe there's no more room,
or there might not be more room. But I tell you what, they've got a lot of space. So they've given us about 300 square meters. So I'm generally like, I'll try not to swear, but I'm packing my pants on one side of things. And then on the other side of things, I have a lot of excitement
It's
for it.
okay to swear.
I'm shitting my pants. I'll
Yeah,
tell you that
no.
much. Yeah, I'm absolutely shitting
We
bricks.
need the raw emotion.
Yeah.
And so it sounds like there's lots of hype. The vibes.
Yeah,
are
so like
high
really
leading in.
trying. We're fresh off the back of running our own novice competition in our gym,
All right.
and we sold that out. That had about 24 lifters. We sold that out, and that was really female dominated.
Oh.
We had, I think it was like
Nice.
18 girls out of the 24
Wow.
competitors, and there's a lot of interest for it. And so now I'm just trying to, alongside of the rest of my schedule, is try to get the information out there, because I feel like as it gets out there and as the interest builds up and we start announcing more sponsors and we start announcing people that are coming on board, I feel like, and look, the target market, I suppose, is CrossFitters.
Yep.
I feel like they're the ones that are keen to try new things. I think they're just generally more open, and I think the weightlifters will come, but I think they'll come when they start seeing prizes that are offered and other opportunities.
Yep.
And whereas I think, and look,
CrossFitters are just down to
100%. And I mean,
heavy 1RM. Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah, say no more. Like at a convention center, this is
Weightlifters
gonna
are
be epic.
like, where's my money?
Yeah, potentially. Yeah. Like, and look, I think there's like, and like, look, the community is really good, but we're kind of spoiled in weightlifting in one regard, in terms of that we don't really have to pay for much. Like once you pay for your yearly fee, competitions are next to nothing.
Yeah.
Which on one hand I think is fantastic, because it lowers the barrier to entry from financial. On the other hand, the downside is the competitions are on average uneventful. They've been better in the last 12 months, to give credit, but they are pretty like compared to what I have in my mind's eye, like, and what we ran at our novice comp and what the series was when we were running it with Josh. Like, it's just, there's so much opportunity there. So much opportunity.
And are there any anyone suiting up from Iron Tribe?
Yeah, so we've got, funnily enough, we have a couple of beginners that'll be keen to do it, which is really exciting, because it's like, I want it to be a very broad range of people. And like one of the ideas I've got is like some of the prizes aren't just for the winners. I want prizes for like best lift, or, biggest effort, or maybe throughout the day we have like a vote of some description from, Instagram or something. But I think we'll have a few. Like, it's also one of those things of like, when your community does something, like we've got a small community and they generally get behind everything that we do. So yeah, we'll have a few lifters. In terms of absolute specifics, there's about 2 that have confirmed, and then there's a few that are like talking about it, because it's still so far away.
Okay. And it sounds like it's been a lot organizing. How has this affected your lifestyle in terms of like training, nutrition, family life?
Well, funnily
sleep?
enough, so you've definitely done your research. So I've been really slack the last 6 months, because I spent probably December through Feb really spending a lot of time on the business for the first time in like ever, I suppose. And because I generally just kind of let the business systems that I set up many years ago kind of do its thing, and it worked to a certain extent. But I was like, if I want this to get to the capacity that I think it can get to, I need to spend more time on the business. And so my training took a nosedive in that. Nothing really ever takes away from the family. Yeah, I bet running a business. And nothing really generally takes away from the family too much. It's generally a pretty sacred time. My partner's very good with when I do extra stuff like this. Like normally Wednesday nights tonight I'm home for dinner, but
Sorry.
No, that's okay. It's fine. This is good. She loves this stuff as well. But yeah, my training, because it's kind of taken a backward step. Half of it is that it's not that the time has disappeared. There's definitely time to train, but you know what it's like when your mental energy is like, time expands to fill that void. And so this has almost been a bit of a, well, I've taken something else on. I need to prove to myself that, like, even if they're just 30-minute sessions, because like, I think CrossFitters are flexible in that they can get a workout done in 10 minutes and it's a box ticked. And I think a downside, and I had that mentality many years ago, but with weightlifting, we have this mentality that it takes you 20 minutes to get to warming up to the snatch weights. And so it's like, what can I do in like a 30 minutes to keep my health and to keep my fitness kind of moving in a direction, and still keep, I enjoy the barbells and still keep that as a part of it. And so it's just been experimenting with stuff like that, which has been good, because in previous years I've managed to train for nationals on an hour twice a week, which was really good.
Yeah, that's efficient.
It was very efficient, especially considering the previous time that I'd made it, it was like 10 hours a week of training. So this was 2 hours a week of training.
I know which one I'll take.
Yeah, 100%. So it's so training, it's been good. Like I've been hitting my I missed today's session, but I'll make that up tomorrow.
Yep.
I might even go early morning, which is normally my sleep in. And then I've been getting 2 to 3 days in, which is like 2 to 3 more than what I was getting for a period.
And what's sort of keeping you, I guess, grounded at the moment? Like, is there any rituals, any mindfulness practices, or is it just caffeine?
White monsters, baby. That's a good question. Like for a long time there, like I had a really good mentor that helped me with different practices like journaling and things like that. I'm pretty good these days at, I suppose, not letting things get to me too much. I'm much better at asking for help than what I was previously. I'm much better at communicating my emotions. So even in the busiest of times, like it's going to get busier as we get closer to this competition, but nothing, I shouldn't say nothing phases me, but not much phases me as much as what it would have many, many years ago, especially, when you first run a business and you just don't know what you don't know. And now that like, even like parenthood, like the first kid, like everything was the biggest deal. And now that we've got 3 kids, it's like, oh, he can jump off that. That's fine. He'll bounce.
Yeah.
And so, so it's no specific practices. Like a couple of things that I've been trying to work on is getting back to reading physical books instead of just listening to them.
Yeah.
And that's something that I used to do like religiously. I enjoyed and not that I enjoyed school so much, but I did enjoy reading. And I feel like if I could go back to school now, I would very much enjoy the process of it. Because I do enjoy learning. It was just the circumstances at that age. It was rebellious and it was like, I don't want to do this. You're telling me to do this. Like,
versus wanting to do it.
Exactly right. Yeah. I had good teachers. The good teachers managed to get that out of me. But it was just, the other teachers had no hope, unfortunately.
It's crazy how it's so different. Like the process of buying a book or borrowing it, picking it up, reading it, allocating time out of your day to do it. Like it's a mindfulness practice in itself just to do 100%. That. And I just don't get how big a difference it is to listening to an audio book.
Yeah. And look, don't get me wrong, I love listening to audiobooks. Like at the moment I've got a fictional book because over the last few years I've gotten back to reading fictional books, and I'm in both now. So I'm like listening to it like on the drive here, listen to a little bit of that, and then I finish it at the chapter that I'm at, and then I might pick it up when I go to bed. Because I think the habit that I'm trying to replace is that typically in bed, if I'm not having a conversation with my partner, it's scrolling.
Yeah.
And I don't necessarily think scrolling's a bad thing if you're not feeling guilty. If you're feeling guilty after it, it's a negative thing. But so one thing I'm like, well, I would like to replace that with a habit that, is good before bed, helps ground me a little bit. And so I generally have 2 or 3 books sitting on my bedside table, and it's like, what do I feel like today? And I just pick up and just slowly go through them. Because I agree, I think there is for me anyway, there's a mindful practice in that.
So I guess from cleans to the courts, I growing up, I heard you were into basketball.
Yeah. Is this you, Josh? Where's he getting this information from?
No, this is all me. I'm a basketball fan, so.
So I was a diehard basketballer growing up. It was my first love in terms of like, if I ever felt like, it's funnily enough, I'm actually helping young men at the moment at a school that I'm at, and I'm having to relive a lot of these experiences in terms of like trying to relate to these kids from year 8 and year 9. And it's funny enough, and the conversation I have had with them a couple of times is just how difficult I felt year 9 was for me. And it wasn't necessarily anything, but the base that I always came back to was like basketball was my safe space. And it was like this thing that I could refine my technique at. It was something that I could just go and play for the sake of playing. And it was, recess, lunch. It was get to school half an hour early because that's how it had to happen. And I play basketball for 30 minutes, and then it was recess, and then it was lunchtime, and playing rep basketball on a Friday night, which at the time I probably didn't necessarily appreciate how much effort that was for my family in terms of like driving great distances. And then the cost associated with it. Like the school that I'm at, some of the kids are really talented, and it's like it's unaffordable at that time. And it's something that like I stopped playing in the void that I suppose it ended up that feeling it was eventually CrossFit and then became weightlifting. But I've kind of refound my passion for basketball in like the last couple of years, going back and playing Masters basketball of all things.
Oh, wow.
And the cool thing about the team that I'm in is that everybody that I play with has played at a much higher level than I ever did. So it's actually like really motivating to be like, well, like I'm trying my hardest. I can't keep up with some of these guys in terms of the skill level and their game, like the brain that they've got on them in terms of like where to. And like I knew some of those things, but it's like Siebel and some of them probably played international. And one of the dudes in his 70s played Pete. He played in, I think he was the first Australian to go play college basketball.
Oh, right.
So it's just been it's been really good to kind of like, even though I haven't been training, that's been also like, oh, I've got my basketball back. It's cool.
I wanted to know more about when you were growing up. Was anything brought up about Olympic lifting?
No,
in the
basketball
space?
No, nothing back then. It was purely like we were taught, funnily enough, now coaching some kids that play basketball, very talented kids, and what I think really worked in my time was it was all fundamentals.
Yep.
Basic, like really basic fundamentals that have stayed with me my whole, like I haven't played, let's say I didn't play basketball for 8 years, come back and I have a lot of the fundamentals. The higher skill stuff in terms of like reading game plan stuff is not necessarily there, but compared to the average person, it's still light years ahead of some people. But there was nothing in strength and conditioning. And when I was dropped from the first rep team I played for in Dandenong Rangers, it was cited that it was height based. So they sent you to get a test and it came back and they were like, you're going to be 5'8". Sorry, you're gone. They were wrong. I'm 5'9". Thank you. And the guy that they replaced me with was like 6'3" at 15 years old or whatever he was. And it was like, he hadn't even hit his growth spurt yet.
Yeah.
And so they're like, you can't teach height. So that was the position that I was playing was that of like, I was playing tall even though I was short. So it's like, that's an easy replacement.
Yeah.
And so, nothing to do with strength and conditioning. Like it was, whereas now, if like all of the kids that I coach, whether it's football, basketball, inline skating, whatever the kids I've coached, strength and conditioning is a huge part of their development.
Do you think it matters?
I think during your formative years, it's almost a cheat code.
Yeah.
I think you've got an abundance of hormones flowing through the system. I think you've got abundance of opportunity in terms of like kids don't break. I'm not saying you want to train them really, really hard, but like combining it with a decent schedule. If you can give them, even if it wasn't training them hard, it was just giving them the skills when they do start to get to that under 16 period, maybe under 17, under 18, and they already know how to lift and they already know how to lift well. Like I think there is an advantage there.
At that age, you're kind of getting through the learning curve, which is, I guess, what most of the older population is currently working through. When you first learn the Olympic lifts, a lot of it's just getting the
fundamentals.
Getting the fundamentals.
Absolutely,
and if you're teaching it at a young age, then then there's just much more room for growth if they want to pursue it.
100%.
Or whoever they want to use it.
And that's the conversation. Like I take an academy at a school. That's the conversation I have with a lot of these kids is it's like, if we remove the sport of the academy, right? And you guys are here, it's mandatory. You've got to do the strength and conditioning side of things. If you just stop viewing this as like, I don't even really care about netball or football. I've just, I enjoy it because I play with my friends. And you view this as like, you're going to go to the gym in your life one day and you're getting this for free essentially, right? You're not, yourselves are paying for it. Mum and dad are paying for it for sure. But you have this opportunity to really kind of learn the skills of it. It's going to come in handy just as a human being later in life. Yeah. And because obviously we use Olympic lifting, but we use a lot of like just basic strength movement. We teach them how to run and jump and hinge properly and squat properly. And we try to make it as engaging as possible and fun in some regard. And so I think it's like even though I'm like my specialty, my passion is weightlifting, I don't necessarily think that you have to do it in order to get good at sports. I think that it's a really useful tool. But I just feel like, especially now coaching people, if somebody has played sports growing up and has had a little bit of exposure to some level of strength training, or even like, we've all met gymnasts who have got phenomenal training bases, and then they walk into a weightlifting club or a CrossFit box and like they're good at everything already.
Yeah.
I think just like a lot of that stuff becomes a little bit of a cheat code for later in life.
And so if short people want to dunk, what's the minimum they need to clean?
Well, it's so funny. So like I have this thing. It's like, do I want to dunk before I'm 40? I feel like that could be a really good goal. So fun little, I suppose, side note is like I was always an okay jumper. And then after a bunch of years of doing weightlifting, and I did a bit of jump work, my first proper weightlifting coach, because I did a lot of it initially on my own, but my first proper weightlifting coach, Dan Miller, he always had an athletic day programmed. So it was box jumps and hurdle hops and all sorts of fun activities.
Yep.
And the first time I went back to playing basketball for a fill-in, I remember getting my palm above the ring and being like, this is interesting. But I never continued to push the specifics of it.
Yeah.
And so now I think it's like, I actually don't think it needs to be heavy. I think it's like, there probably is a minimum load to some extent, but I think it just needs to be at a certain speed.
Yeah.
Because I've power cleaned 120 and I haven't dunked. And I feel like I could probably get there power cleaning 100 to 120 at a different speed.
Okay.
If I was practicing the actual skill of jumping, I suppose.
So that's a bit of that, was it that Soviet style, training where
the GPP stuff?
They're getting into like, speed training and all the like generating force and sounds like that's
I think it's like a whole approach, like the whether it's I think you got to be obviously a base level fitness. The advice I give all the basketballers when they first come to me, especially if they're like have a little bit of natural jump ability, is like, your job is not to learn how to dunk, your job is to learn how to palm the ball.
Yeah.
Because you're going to dunk.
Yes.
And if you can't palm the ball, then how are you going to actually get to a single hand dunk?
I'm just going to catch oops.
Exactly. Yeah. You just end up letting go and pulling on the ring a little bit.
Yeah.
And so that's always my advice for basketballers that have like a bit of hops, is like, just like, if you're doing a good strength and conditioning program that has a good amount of like hopping and jumping and stuff in it, then it's only a matter of time before you do start dunking. But you got to get the skill of like holding onto the ball or even approaching the ring, right? Because like it's funnily enough now, the stuff that I thought I did naturally, which is attributed to the base of training that I had playing rep basketball, that stuff's just not taught anymore.
Yeah.
Because there's such a broad range of kids to choose from. They just choose relatively naturally athletic kids, and then they just like put them in a team. And then the cream kind of rises to the top. So it feels like from the outside looking in, the fundamentals are skipped these days because they don't have to. They've got 5 teams to choose from and just the cream rises.
Yeah. It grinds my gears a bit. But and then the CrossFit sort of, after you did basketball, when did CrossFit come about? How did that chapter start? So
my little brother actually introduced me to it. So he was a early-ish, I suppose, adopter. He went to CrossFit Frankston, and we were living in Forest Hill at the time because that was the closest box that he could go to. And he was working kind of Mornington Peninsula way. And so it was like a 30-minute drive, but he would go religiously, like 4 or 5 days a week with Rob, and loved it. And so what ended up happening was, and my uncle, actually, funnily enough, my uncle and my cousin Ben, he owned CrossFit, what was Mornington Peninsula, and my uncle was obsessed with it, like die hard. This is like probably 2011, 2012, like early days CrossFit.
Oh yeah, the OGs.
And like, Rabdo the clown is like painted on the wall, that type of stuff.
Yeah, tattooed on your shoulder.
Yeah, absolutely. And so it was like in the family in some extent, and I was doing personal training at the time, and personal training was with a really good personal trainer. I had a very good personal trainer, and let's say it was costing me like $80 a session back then for PT. My brother, like a box started in CrossFit Burwood, and it was only a small box, but my brother's like, well, I'm not driving to Frankston anymore. I've got something 15 minutes away. I'll go there. Then my dad started, and then they dragged me along. And back then it was like, I don't know, $55 a week or something, which seemed expensive, but it was also like I could train 5 days a week versus the 1 day PT. There was a coach there and the sessions were small. So that's kind of what launched me into CrossFit. Was like, I liked being fit. I always liked some type of movement. I tried going to the gym, always being a smaller person. And then this was this new thing that was like, it was like cost effective compared to PT.
Yep.
They did these cool new movements with a barbell. Like I'd done squats and deadlifts, but there were these things where you're picking things up and putting them on your chest and putting them overhead. And the gymnastic stuff, obviously being smaller, I gravitated towards that a little bit.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't say like I fully loved it initially, because it was extremely painful, as it is.
Yeah.
But like the community was probably what kept me coming back. Was like, it's like PT. I love my PT. He was a good guy, but it was like, there's only so many times he can ask me how my week is.
Yeah. True.
Whereas the classes, like, and the gym just got bigger and bigger, and you met more people of so many walks of life, and helicopter pilots and doctors, and it's just this kind of melting pot of people that just wanted to go and get better.
Yeah.
So that was where that started, essentially. Yeah.
A group of like-minded people, and then I guess that's where you're introduced to weightlifting. And then, so when did you decide that weightlifting was, and how did you decide that just weightlifting was your thing?
So what happened was I'd started coaching, and I obviously want, like any young coach, you feel like you have no idea what you're doing. And I was like, my brother had gone to this Donnie Schenkel seminar. Maybe, I don't even know if it was like weeks before or many, many months before, and he was coming back.
Yep.
And he was like, oh, you have to come to this seminar. It's really good. So I go to this seminar, and I was like, I'm pretty strong for my weight. I was very small back then. I was like maybe 70 kilos if I was lucky. And 60, maybe I was like 67 kilos or something. I was very, very small. And I was like, oh yeah, I'll be probably like, I won't be the strongest, but I'll be pretty good in terms of like power to weight ratio. And Tom Lengel was there, this is at CrossFit Geelong, where the Donnie Schenkel seminar was. And he was like snatch 105 kilos at like 68 body weight or something like that. And he moved like a weightlifter, even though he was a CrossFitter.
Yeah.
And listening to Donnie talk about the approach that he took to weightlifting was like, this is basketball. This is like redefining your game and working on specific components of it. And it was really poetic in how he approached it. And it was just like this like thing that just made so much sense to me. And then because I showed so much interest in it, and that stage I was only part-time coach. I was working as a furniture removalist at the time. My coach kind of saw me taking this big interest in it. He's like, oh, if we ran a weightlifting class, would you like to take it? And I was like, hell yeah, I would like to take it.
Yeah.
And I literally just used the exact same cues Donnie gave me forever. And it became slowly one of the busier classes. And it was like, because it was smack bang in the middle. You had the 4:30, 5:30 weightlifting, and then 6:30 class to finish. And so it was like you had both parties either side of that were coming to the 5:30 class for the 5:30 weightlifting. And then it grew to 2 sessions, and I just fell in love with it. And I suppose once I think it was CrossFit Rosebud at the time, which my cousin changed from Mornington Peninsula to CrossFit Rosebud. He was running. They decided to run a novice weightlifting competition. And actually, funnily enough, Josh lifted at that competition as well, which is, we didn't know each other at the time. I think I just pipped him on the podium because he took a silly jump, but we didn't know what we were doing at the time. And like, what does this even mean? Like, just take 10 kilo jumps.
10 kilo. I was about to say 10 kilo. I thought he made a 10 kilo jump.
Oh, did you? And I still beat you. There you go. Power to weight ratio, baby.
Sinclair,
but I would have,
at the end of the day,
I think I actually like starved myself to get my body weight even lower.
Nice.
And it was like, I think I snatched 80 and then I went from 80 to 90 on my third attempt and got nowhere near it.
10 kilo jumps. Huge.
And you just don't know any better. But so I did this competition, and Victorian weightlifting had Mark Manzor, Jackie White, Pedro, I can't remember Pedro's last name, but really prominent figures at that time, and still two of them in weightlifting. They were the like referees, so to speak. And then like Jackie is like, oh, you should like think about signing up to a competition. I was like, they do more of these things? And I was like, everything I was reading at the time was like, you can't do both things. You can't do fitness and do weightlifting.
Can't serve two masters.
Exactly. And it was like, I was like, well, this is my biggest weakness in CrossFit. I'm going to spend the next 6 to 12 months and just getting as strong as I possibly can. I get my technique as good as I can, and I'll just go and compete. And I was coaching weightlifting classes. So like, how can I talk from a position of experience if I've never even done a sanctioned weightlifting competition? And it just kind of started from there. And I learned later that you can actually get good at both things if you've got the time frame to get good at it. Because the guys I was coaching, like I shot ahead of people in terms of obviously technique, but in terms of load. But they just slowly chipped away and they slowly caught up. And so it was like over years you learn that like, no, you can do, like maybe at the elite level you can't do both things, unless your name's Tia Claire Toomey. Obviously, you can do whatever you want if your name's Tia Claire Toomey.
Yeah.
But like for myself, it was like I just went all in, and over time, I was like, I think my version of weightlifting isn't so much like your traditional version of weightlifting. Like we have a program that is definitely traditional, but I liked like when we started the club, we have a spot like it almost looks like a pseudo CrossFit gym in that we've got a box, we've got rings hanging from trawler arms, and we've got spaces to do handstand push-ups if like because we do a lot of handstand work, a lot of basic gymnastics work, and I like this idea of like building a general athlete that just happens to be really good at weightlifting. I think it's just like from a long-term perspective, it's more engaging, it's more fun. Like half of the reason why I think CrossFit keeps people is that there's just so many things to get good at. You can't really get too down on yourself for the first 5 years, because something's going to improve somewhere. Box jumps, handstand push-ups, push-ups, whatever it is, pull-ups. There's because of the kipping variations that you've got, you can go from not being able to do a toe bar to doing 5. And so, not that we necessarily do kipping work in my gym unless they're a CrossFitter and I'm just helping them with that stuff. But so I kind of grew into like I loved it, and I loved the sport of it, the process of it all. Like again, it reminded me of basketball. It's like I played video when I wasn't playing basketball, it was video games. So I was like, I gamified everything in terms of like, all right, the squat's lacking, we're going to put more time and focus into the squat. Or it's like, oh, my upper back's weak, or mobility, the foam roller, which is fixed jerks, is clearly
it's a craft that you could master.
And then like reading, you've mentioned the Soviets, like reading about like this the process of attaining mastery, like was just this thing that like just drew to me. Like I think the thing that still keeps me doing it to this day is that like I have ambitions to beat previous numbers, even though my training hours is a lot less. But the thing I remind myself of is even if I don't necessarily beat those numbers, I like moving well. And I feel like even if I'm just snatching 60 kilos and people, because like we have a guy at our gym who grew up in Kazakhstan as a weightlifter and grew up in a school, and he actually has a card that says Master of Sport. Like he achieved a Master of Sport. And what's fascinating is like we've all been there. We're obsessed with like more weight. But people will stop and watch him snatch 50 kilos because it is just perfection. And I like that about weightlifting, is that it's like when you reach a certain level, it's like, and you are past the ego side of things, which we all have, it's nice moving well. It's fun to move well. It's fun to move with grace, with speed, with precision. And like I feel like if I can do that as I age, I'll be very nimble. I'll probably still have to do other training around it anyway, but I find that really enjoyable. So it's like if I was to go and like make the process, I want to go and dunk, I'd probably still snatch and clean and do things like that just for the enjoyment of it. And it's such a perishable skill that I've seen guys later in life lifting that were like Commonwealth Game Olympic representatives, and they can't do it anymore. Like they've got the bare bones of it, but the mobility is just all lost now. And like, even though they were unbelievably great movers back in the day, it's gone now. And I'm like, I want to hold on to that for as long as I can, naively, if it is.
Do you think you can? Do you think it's possible?
Absolutely, yeah. I've seen like if you go to like masters events where people haven't necessarily stopped, there's some very good movers. And maybe not just in Australia. Like if you go like Masters Worlds or Masters World Cup, like you're seeing people in their 60s move with like we've got a guy that trains with us. He's in his early 50s, and God, he moves really well. And obviously as you age, you've just got to be careful of loads because the body breaks down a little bit more. But and he's still taking it competitively. But I think if you remove that competitive side of things and you just move for enjoyment, I think you can always move really well.
Yeah, so they've called it, I've heard it called barbell gymnastics before. That's what weightlifting is.
Yeah,
I want to get into like my territory a bit, and
teeth?
The dental world.
Yeah, talk to
me. Not so much about teeth though, but like, at DentalFit, I guess we're trying to find the link between dentistry and overall health and wellness, and for me as well, like, I'm interested in fitness, so I like to see how that intertwines. And I was just thinking with breathing, like let's talk breathing, nasal versus mouth breathing. Is there any relevance in the weightlifting world in terms of your coaching and what you tell people to do and how the lifts are executed?
Yeah, absolutely. And I actually have follow-up questions too in terms of, I think, mouth breathing and
That's
stuff
fine.
like that, because I've
Yep.
got some dental things I think you'll be fascinated to hear about later.
Yeah, of course.
But yeah, so like essentially whenever we meet a new client, a new member, a new athlete, even if they've done training before, the first place we start them is on the floor, lying on the back, and we talk them through breathing. We talk them through breathing mechanics.
Yep.
And just simply in through the nose, out through the mouth type stuff. And we try to get them connected with what's kind of going on with their body. Because on the floor, it's like the simplest of places. Gravity is imposing, the least amount of effort on you because you're not standing up and having to hold yourself up. The ground is supporting you. And so I suppose we would look at it from two regards, whether it's creating pressure in terms of bracing, or probably three regards. Another thing that we've experimented with over the last few years is like how your breathing affects your accessories, like in terms of like if you're breathing into certain areas of the upper back, into the lungs and filling up more than what you probably would in certain points. Does that actually open up mobility in your upper thorax, in upper areas, maybe even lower areas in regards to the hips? And then I suppose the other way we would look at breathing is like whether it's calming the nervous system or getting the nervous system to fire up.
Okay.
And because if you can't control the breath in a competition setting, you're going to lose control of your heart rate. And even though it's not high intensity workouts, it would be the same for CrossFit. Once you redline, it is really, really hard to kind of come back from that. And the system that controls that is obviously your breath. So we teach some of that stuff, and obviously some people it's super basic. It's just like breathing in and bracing. And then for some of our high level athletes, it's on like controlling that nervous system.
And I guess in my world, we do see people with restrictions in both, but mostly nasal breathing. And there's
I'm a terrible nasal breather.
There's actually some anatomical reasons for that. Sometimes, ex-rugby players or boxers
have broken
just
noses,
had everything smashed up,
Yeah.
and just some people just have narrow airways, and some people have narrow jaws, and these are the things that can sometimes affect it. And so I know in CrossFit it's in there's some workouts where I guess to get good at the monostructural machines, they want you to nasal breathe and for a period of time, and it can get a bit challenging, and that's the point you have to push through. And so I was just wondering, I can see now that there's definite like place for it in weightlifting. I also know, what about clenching? Because
teeth
in my world, that's 3 red lights if you clench. But in what's it like in yours? Yeah,
so it's interesting because I've been going to a dentist a bit recently, and that's the first question they ask is like, "Are you a big clencher?" And I'm not a clencher at all. And they're like, "But you're lifting weights," and I'm like, I tense my jaw, but if I'm snatching or clean and jerking, my mouth's generally open.
Yep.
And when I'm squatting, for whatever reason, I'm just not that way inclined.
Yeah.
But I do know of people, like my first coach, he had lifters that wore mouth guards.
Okay.
Because they were like, a couple of them were wrestlers, and they were like very fiery people. So when you watch them squat, they were clenchers.
Okay.
And so in my gym, it's probably not even a question that I've asked, which is probably something that I should do. But because funnily enough, the dentist conversation's going around the gym at the moment. But but I've put the fear of God into people.
Like why is a dentist got you on a podcast?
No, well, that'll be this kind of it's funny how things align. So to give you a bit of an idea, I went to the dentist recently, had a bit of a sore tooth, had to get a root canal, and they're like, "Oh, you've actually got some pretty bad gums at the moment." And then so now I've got to see a periodontist for that.
Yeah. But
some of the questions they were asking was around water intake, my breathing, and obviously like cleaning, but like certain things like that. And so like when you go to the gym and you're like, I'm just having to spend $2,000 on this root canal, and then I'll spend $2,000 on a crown, and you start talking about these things, people are like, "Oh my God, I haven't been to the dentist in 7 years. I don't want to go anymore."
Gosh.
Which I'm sure you hear quite regularly.
Well, the cost tends to put people off, and then I guess that's why we're trying to like, I guess, bring a holistic, approach to it. And And so you were saying like people were using mouth guards as well.
Yeah.
And so you're not a clencher and you don't need a mouth guard, but you've seen people clench and use mouth guards, I guess, when they squat. And some people have like an open mouth technique where when they lift and, but I'm not sure when they like, I don't know. I think like Carlos Nassar he's got
maybe
like
in the squat portion of it. But yeah, Bulgarian lifter. Yeah, Carlos Nassar's like, he's been 18 for about 20 years now.
Yeah, I know. It hasn't changed.
No.
But he's looked 35 since he was like
Absolutely.
16.
Yeah, 100%. Is that something that like, I suppose when you sit down with people, is that a commonality you're seeing? Because obviously you're going into the fitness industry because they're the people you really like working with. Are there like, what would be the two most common issues you're seeing, I suppose, with fit people?
Well, when we see, when someone says, I don't clench, and then we see them and they've got thick muscles on the side here, masseter muscles, that's just because you've been working it out, like from squeezing. And maybe it's not during the workouts, maybe it's at other times in the day.
Yeah.
But we also see the signs of tooth wear, and if the teeth, and if the teeth have been worn, that prompts the question. And so if we see a jacked individual, or someone who lifts, or the first instinct might be that it's because of your weight training.
Yep. And here's the thing, it's funny, I should actually film myself more on my accessories.
Yeah.
Because on the Olympic lifts, I know I don't. But maybe when I'm doing presses or rows or who knows, like it could definitely be there.
And we also find that during the day, people are just unaware if their teeth are together, whether they're concentrating, whether they're working, and they're not meant to be. There are apps that are available that can prompt you throughout the day and just ask you, what are you doing with your teeth at the moment? And we tell patients to download it, and you'll just say, yep, no, I'm relaxed, I'm cool.
Yeah.
Or no, they're actually touching. And it just prompts you to like, hey, maybe just relax a bit.
That's
and
cool.
Through that, the message can, I guess, get through that you're not supposed to have your teeth together during the day. But then I wonder, these wrestlers that you're talking about, like force exertion, is there any science behind squeezing your teeth and increased muscle output?
Potentially,
it's
right?
Gotta be, right? Like the strongmen do it.
And I feel like, funnily enough, like even when I was moving furniture, I reckon I might have been a clencher doing that type of stuff because it was such like a overcoming thing.
Yeah.
So like deadlift or something like that, where it's like as you're going through it. But like in weightlifting, it's quite common, and whether it's a learned behavior from seeing the world's best do it, or whether it's a natural thing because you are creating tension in your jaw in terms of by opening it up at the same time. But yeah, I don't know. That'd be an interesting one to look at. What do you think then, I suppose, like outside of the prompt, if you could give people like basic, because like we talked about the fear of going to a dentist in terms of the cost, and like chances are if I just hadn't have avoided it for 8 years and gone maybe every 6 months, I probably would have avoided larger costs.
Yeah.
Like what is like, how do you encourage people to get through that, I suppose?
We have to, we've got many different options at that point in time. Sometimes we're limited, but we definitely know prevention is the best medicine. And the more preventive measures we take, the less overall cost on the patient, not only just financial, but pain and biological costs that are there. So if people can get into the habit of checking it early, they'll definitely prevent. And they should also speak openly about, I guess, what's the long-term goal. Like sometimes we just look at a snapshot in time, but it's important to look at a person's where they're going to be in 5 years, 10 years. And whilst we don't have crystal balls, we can still help people if they've got that, I don't know, mindset of overall health and wellness.
Yes.
That, we can be on board with helping you with that with your dental health.
Yeah. Because I have heard that like, and it might not be just gums, but the mouth in general, that like your mouth is a kind of preview into how your overall health is doing. Is that fair to say?
Yeah. The mouth is the gateway to the soul, and I don't know,
Yeah.
to your health. I don't
Yeah.
know. But there's actually a Japanese saying where it talks about that, and your the more I think about it, the more I agree with it. But then I'm biased, so
Of course. Yeah. But I like that prevention is the best thing because it's the same in lots of bits of health, right? It's like you're not going to wait till you got heart disease to kind of try to help look after your heart, or hopefully, right? So it's like, I suppose, getting that information out there so that people, like even for my kids now, there's some of the stuff that I'm going through. Not that I think a root canal is that bad, but in terms of like the gum stuff, and it's like, well, yeah, if I just had have taken better care or been a bit more focused, not a lot.
yeah.
It's like anything. Maintenance is it's like so easy to maintain.
It's,
Once you get a little bit behind, it's so hard to play catch up.
And it's the same like when you put all the pillars of health like down and you look at it, same with like weightlifting or any other type of movement. Motion is lotion. What you put in your body. Can I out train a bad diet? You know, some people can.
Yeah.
I've tried to do that. Doesn't work.
Yeah.
Still trying.
Yeah.
And it's the same with dental health, and it's I want to go across to like I guess lifting styles, and I know this is like taking a bit of a detour, but it sort of goes back to the head and neck and airways, but more with head position.
Yep.
Lifters from different countries sometimes adopt different styles.
Yes.
And we know the Chinese and the Koreans, they have like this really tucked gaze down. The Americans sort of look forward. Is that anatomical, or is that I wonder if it's biological or if it's like a coaching.
So I think every country. So I've been fortunate. I got to train in China for 2 weeks at Beijing Sports University. So I got to actually get trained with a school, I suppose, of weightlifters. And like it says university, but like I'm sure some of the kids there were like 14 years old, and it's almost like this tier system.
It could be in university.
Yeah, well, yeah. But they like slowly build the kids up depending on their totals. I think they go from like provinces to universities, from universities to army teams, and then eventually to the National Training Center. And a couple of the guys I met there have gone and done Bulgarian camps, and I think the majority of weightlifting is very similar in terms of the positions that you're looking to get into. I think the nuances that come with it are probably more closer to anthropometrics in terms of like lever lengths and like the best way I heard it put was recently there was a Colombian teen coach in Australia, and a close friend of mine, Katie, had him at the gym because one of his lifters is training outside of her gym, Melbourne West, and she was like, "Can I pick your brains for a few hours?" And when I heard of this, I'm like, "Can I tag along?" And his big thing is that they teach technique, they don't teach style. Okay. And why I think that's kind of important is it's like Americans teach external rotation, Chinese teach internal rotation of the shoulders. Like when you're there and they are putting you in those positions, like it doesn't work.
Yeah.
And I think it's like if you get the base of what they're teaching, because the positions are like the start positions probably just a little bit lower for the Chinese, but they've also got on average shorter femurs.
Yep.
And it's not to say that all Chinese people are the same, but when they're picking these athletes, they just slowly end up filing into a pretty similar
to the basketball.
Exactly
approach.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
And so, but then you go to like Russia or European countries, and they tend to have a bit longer levers.
Yep.
They're definitely dense in terms of the muscle mass they carry. And then you go to somewhere like Colombia, they're very long levered.
Yeah. They're like holding the
and
bar
that's part of. So they don't teach that. So like.
Yeah.
And what Colombia does very well is all the national coaches, they always get together, and then it just filters down. They're always very helpful, according to this particular coach. They're very helpful, and they always have time for other coaches that are coming up. And he was saying that we don't teach that. It's just style. It's just something that obviously like a couple of really good guys have done and girls, and then it's just slowly kind of spread. So, I think it's when you're a beginner and even intermediate, you can kind of get lost copying your favorite athlete. And like sometimes it works. I mean, if you the 6 months post me getting back from China, if you looked at some of my lifts, I look like a Chinese weightlifter, just very white.
Yeah, I tried a squat jerk once.
Oh yeah, that was impossible for me. But that's that's another common question. It's so like everyone's like, "Oh, can I squat jerk?" And I'm like, "You can't even push jerk. How are you gonna squat jerk?" Like, so yeah, it's very funny.
Let's dive in a bit more into Iron Tribe. Tell us a bit more about how Iron Tribe came to life. I heard it almost didn't happen at some stage.
Yeah, so how it all happened was the CrossFit box that I was working at, there was this plan for me to eventually be, like I was full-time there, but I was working as a contractor, and there was this kind of plan for me to eventually come on board as a employee, and it just it wasn't really feasible, and which was fair both ways. And so when I had that conversation, when my boss and coach had that conversation with me, which he was really honest about, I was like, well, if that's okay, can I brand myself? And so Iron Tribe was kind of born through that. I was already, the weightlifting club was essentially mine, even though it was CrossFit Box Hill at the time, because it was just me doing everything out of love. And he was like, yeah, absolutely. And so it started there, and then not long later I got engaged, and so obviously having to start thinking about what the future holds, and can I do the hours that I'm doing at the moment, and it just wasn't really feasible. So I remember having a conversation with a close friend of mine, and I was like, if someone would just pay me $1,000 a week and I could finish at 3:00 every day, I would quit my job and I would start Iron Tribe from my house. And the guys, was at 3 or 4 guys I was training from my house at this stage, in a really awful setup, but it worked. And they were just like general strength guys. I was almost like kind of pseudo CrossFit from home.
Yeah.
And
the garage.
Yeah. And the shred shed, as it was affectionately
Shred
known. And so what ended up happening was he's like, I'll give you a job. And it was building buses of all things.
Yeah.
And so he's like, you just can't let anyone know that we're friends, because they hate me at this place. Like the actual like guys on the floor, management loved him. And so yeah, I went and I started getting some money behind me, and I'd finish at 4:00, and I'd come home, and I remember there was this point of like I was making really good, at the time, really good money for what seemed like not a lot of effort. And I was coaching from home. So I had my passion.
It's like a work from home.
It was a work from home thing afterwards. So I was like, work till 4:00, come home and coach till 8:00. And I was just like quite happy.
Yeah.
Really happy, if anything. Money was coming in, partner was happy. But again, I was in the same position I was in terms of like no flexibility. The whole reason why I started coaching was, one, I loved it, but two was like, can I find some flexibility? I don't mind working big weeks, but can I pick and choose my hours so I can spend time with my eventual family? Because at this stage we didn't have kids. And then anyway, there was this point where it was like pure fear of like, if I commit to this factory, most gyms fail. On average, they all fail in some capacity. It's like, am I just delaying the inevitable? Why am I doing this type thing? And so, yeah, what ended up happening was
you were getting cold feet, sounds like.
100%, yeah. And I called a couple of people, like one of them being my dad, and Tracy, my partner, called her dad. And both our parents have had, I'd almost say, relatively, at this stage, relatively low risk in terms of like, especially Tracy's parents, in terms of like financial risk and things like that. And both dads were like, you have to do this. Like Tracy's dad gave her the advice. My dad's advice was like, take the biggest bite you can and chew like fuck. And for a guy that had, I suppose, played it relatively safe most of his life in terms of going into the family business and just sticking it out for 40 years or whatever it's been, I was like, well, if I'm ever going to do it, now's the time. We don't have kids. We don't have that much responsibilities. And so, yeah, we took the jump. And look, it's definitely been the hardest thing that I've ever done, but it's definitely been the most rewarding in so many regards. Like, I'm finally now in a position where, as I think I was saying to you, Wednesday's my day with the kids. I have Brandy and I've got Darcy. I get to walk, if not today because it's too cold, but I get to walk my oldest to kinder. And Friday I get to finish a little bit early and take my daughter to gymnastics. And, I still do like six, it's like with your own business, you still do the big days. And, sometimes it's Saturday night, sometimes it's Sunday night, you're ticking some things off. But that flexibility and the community as well, whenever I have days, as every business owner does, where they're like, is this worth it? It'd just be so much easier just to
work for
go
someone
and punch a clock and go home and take my holidays.
Yep.
The people that I have because we have a lot of people travel quite far to our gym, whether it's like one of the girls drove an hour the other morning through traffic to come to us, and probably drove past 3 other weightlifting clubs and multiple CrossFit boxes, because I met her at a CrossFit box. I used to coach at a CrossFit box, and that's one of like 10 people that travel quite far. Like I reckon more people are further away than are local, and so they're the people that I'm like, how can I stop?
Yeah, it keeps you going, and it's I guess, where does the name Iron Tribe? Where did that come from?
So I knew it had to have something to do with community, because like I always the way I used to tell a story for Iron Tribe was I took all the things I love from CrossFit and I put it into weightlifting, and community is obviously a massive part of CrossFit. It's why you go and suffer, right? It makes the suffering so much more appealing. And so I knew that like I didn't want something massive, so we have a small space, and it was like, well, and I think it's Ben Bergeron said, like, it should almost feel like if someone's walking through your gym and you don't know their name, it's like they're walking through your kitchen. And it's like, so this idea of like tribe and family, we're like kind of close. And then iron just being the barbell is like, it's like just kind of fitted together. And I remember going backwards and forwards with my partner and like just these names, and she was like, "Oh my God, just pick a name." But then when that came up, she's like,
"No, it's got to be the right one."
Yeah. And she's like, "That's a really good name." So yeah.
And what's the vibe like? What kind of culture are you kind of fostering at the gym?
It's so funny because like I was listening to Bella's episode on the way here, and they have their like the 3 values, and and I really resonate with their values. And it was like, I kind of trying to think of like what the values were of Iron Tribe. And like, I'm a pretty relaxed person. I like working hard, but I also like the idea of that people can, that like, it's not that serious. Like, even if you're like, I get it. Like when we start going to nationals and maybe even above that, it's a different thing. That's a very different thing.
Yeah.
And I have lifters with those aspirations, and yeah, we have different conversations. But I think that like at the crux of it, you've got to go back to the reason why you're doing it. And most people got into it because they enjoyed it.
Yeah.
And so I think like one of the biggest parts about us Iron Tribe is that like I sometimes have this look in the mirror. I'm like, people don't even like weightlifting. They just like coming to the place because they have fun.
That's perfect.
And which is why as I've grown in being a business owner and a coach, I have now we've got multiple programs for people to choose from.
Yeah.
So that they've got like, well, actually, I do enjoy the weightlifting, but I don't care about it that much. So if I did it once a week and I did all the other things, and I got to train with the people that train it 2 to 3 times a week or 4 times a week, then I'm happy.
I just like watching them do weightlifting.
Exactly. They inspire me. And I like doing the snatches and clean and jerks, but it's not my identity. So, yeah.
And let's pivot to like the podcast that you're on. So you have the Progress Lab.
Yep.
With Alice.
Alice,
yep.
A good friend of yours.
Yeah. Alice. And how did that come about?
So what happened was I'd been asked to do a podcast by one of my employees and friends, SARS. And when we initially kind of talked about it, it was going to be purely fitness. And at that stage, I was like, if I have to talk about fitness or training, I think I'm going to gouge my eyeballs out. Because I love it, but it's so and it feels like probably similar to what you're doing with this, is like, if I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it about something that I'm passionate about. And so I was like, yeah, I'm passionate about fitness, but I've spent so much of my life in it and living it. I'm like, I enjoy, like, part of the thing that I really like with weightlifting or CrossFit or coaching, like I'll always coach in some capacity, and funnily enough, looking back, have coached since I was a young age in terms of basketball. but I like the human improvement side of things. I like the human growth side of things.
Yeah.
And so like that's kind of where like Alice asked me, and I was like, and she wanted to initially make it fitness based as well, because that's probably where both of our niches are. And I said the same thing to that I said to Saz, is that like I just don't think I can do a fitness one. But if we make it about like, for lack of a better term, self-improvement or growth, that's something I can get behind. And that's kind of where the Progress Lab kind of came from. I think it was Alice's idea for the name, or ChatGPT's, who knows. And so, yeah, we started it, and we've had a broad range of people that like, the way that I see it is like, our goal is to do it once a week. And not miss a session. We haven't yet for 16 weeks, which is really great considering our busy schedules. But if I can meet people like similar to yourself, like when we get, hopefully we can get you on the podcast and we get to have you talking about like progress in the mouth and like, what does this look like? And
how much I snatch and clean and jerk.
Yeah, we'll definitely ask those questions. And it's like we've had different, like we've got a sex therapist coming on Saturday. We've had Geordie who
I can't give you any info on that. Sorry.
No, that's okay.
I'm the other end.
The other end?
Oh, okay. Keep going.
Yeah. But just like getting these different guests on is like very enjoyable, and hearing their stories, and like similar to what you're doing now. It's like, would I do it for free? I'd do it for free.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of where it came from.
And why do these, you mentioned it's about growth. Why do these conversations matter? It's not just, sounds like it's not just what happens underneath the barbell, but what happens around the barbell.
Yeah. So I think like, anything, it's very, in my opinion, not just in weightlifting, in life, it's very rarely the ability that stops somebody. We talked about me getting in the gym, cold feet with that. It's this self-talk that I think everybody's guilty of in some capacity, in terms of like negative, like we've got a negativity bias, right? Like everyone assumes that they can't do the thing, so they don't allow themselves to try to do the thing. And whether that's stepping foot into a weightlifting gym, and I like to leverage it because it is probably, in my opinion, one of the hardest things to pick up to do well. And if you are someone that chases that level of mastery, and you apply those difficult lessons into everyday life, it's the same process. And that's why like I didn't know the lessons I was learning playing basketball at the time, but it's like you can, now as a confident and as a grown adult, I can be like, I can do hard things. And having a mentor a bunch of years ago that really helped me get to the nitty gritty of why I became a coach without me realizing I became that was the reason. It's like, that's the stuff that I'm really fascinated in, is like the person behind the mask that we all put on in some capacity. And it's like, what are their hopes? What are their dreams? And how can I encourage more people to actually try things? Because I think it's like, I've been very fortunate, lucky, however you want to put it. But this idea of growth, this idea of figuring things out is like something that I'm very interested in. And in a society in today where it feels like so many people, like depression is almost like everybody has it in some capacity. How can we help those? How can we help people find their inner self, or what's their story, and start telling their story in a way that is meaningful to themselves, that they actually look at the person in the mirror with pride.
Well, thanks, Chris. That's I think that brings us to a close. Just want to say thank you for being on the show. It's been great having you on. Where can people find out more about you?
So there's 3 places they can find out about me now. So the Iron Tribe Classic, if you're a CrossFitter or a weightlifter and you're interested in doing a competition that's really fun and accessible, and has almost the same energy as a CrossFit competition. So Iron Tribe Classic, the Instagram, slowly starting to put more and more information about that. If you're interested in actual like weightlifting coaching, Iron Tribe Weightlifting Instagram. And if you're just interested in me making fun of myself and lifting and my fellow lifters, and it's just at ACKES or ACKES is my personal Instagram handle, and I'm always down to talk.
Beautiful. Thanks, Chris.
Awesome. Thanks so much, man.
No worries.
Cheers. Thanks so much.